Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the marketing series. Today, Tony and I are going to talk about navigating marketing paralysis. You might be saying, what is that? But I bet you felt it before. With the abundance of different marketing channels and strategies, it can be very overwhelming. So, today we're going to talk about how to navigate all of those things, stop the overwhelm so that you can make an informed decision and start marketing.
Most of us are small business owners, right? We don't have big teams or we don't have big budgets to hire companies and things like that. And just life in general can become very overwhelming, right? And we all find the need that we know we need to market, right? We know that maybe potentially our business is maybe hurting because we are not able to, right?
Mm.
But then when you start to look at it, there's just so much that you freeze.
So, how do I know if I'm experiencing this overwhelm?
I think you start to get anxious, you start to feel anxiety. Um, you are looking to make everything perfect, right? And because you are trying to do that, you don't post things, or you don't launch that new website. And then you wake up the next day and you still don't do it. And then now it's a week, now it's 2 months, now it's 3 months. And you just feel this overwhelm, almost like the world's like kind of, almost kind of like, crushing you in, type thing. So you feel it.
I think we're so used to putting perfect out, right? Like to have everything be perfect. And I know for us, when we did our first video, it was like, it's not going to be perfect and it's okay. We're just going to put it out there. Like we're just going to do it.
Right.
And that's step one, because if you go back to anyone's first Instagram post, first YouTube video, first anything, there's growth and evolution as you continue and go on.
Right. I think as long as we can all remember that, I think we all go through it, right? I think as long as we remember it's okay, right? We all had to start someplace, okay? Are there going to be people that watch our videos and say, wow, the quality stinks or whatever, right? You know what I mean? Yeah, maybe it sucks for a little bit or hurts, right? You know what I mean? But I think, for you and I, right, it's just more important to do it, and it's the message that we're trying to deliver, and I think that's what you have to remember. I know depending on the business, right, sometimes because of the image that you're trying to portray, right, you do have to be a little bit more sensitive to that, right? But there's a cost to not posting too, right? You know what I mean? So I think it's just finding that balance, where you have to be okay. It can always be better, right? But you can be better on the next one, type thing, right? And again, people may not agree with this philosophy, right? And that's okay. I'm telling you right now that there's people out there that will sit there and say, no, these things have to be perfect. I'm like, but they don't. There's not what's perfect, right? You know what I mean? I think perfect's an opinion.
There is no perfect. It's just progress.
That's a good way of saying it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think if you keep building on things, things will get better, right? And when you look back a year ago or 2 years ago, right, it's like, wow, look how far we've come. We go through that stuff too. Like there are definitely mornings I wake up in the morning and I have so much stuff to do that I'm like, I just don't know what to do. Right. And it's hard sometimes, right? Because I'm like, right. And I always I take a deep breath, right? I step back, right? I always have like these positive affirmations, like how like it's a beautiful day, the sun's out, you know what I mean? Have this amazing life, right? You know what I mean? And then I go, okay, let me look at my list, and I go, oh yes, that's right. This is what I'm going to start with today. And it just a little reset, and it goes a long way. But I think we all know when that happens to all of us.
Yeah, give me a few strategies on how to break down that overwhelm and move past that.
Nike's slogan, just do it.
Easier said than done.
But honestly, I think sometimes it's just doing it. Just put that out there, right? It's not perfect, just do it, right? So, I think that's a great way of doing it, right? The other thing is, I think a lot of it is if you're able to kind of set up like your goals and priorities. If it's on task, right, and it makes sense to what your goal is, right, the creative may not be as important, right? Because again, as long as it gets the message across, it's okay, from that standpoint of view. You're going to get feedback, good or bad, right? You know what I mean? And based on that feedback, you can make improvements towards like the next post, right? You know what I mean? So I think, again, I cannot stress enough that, just go out there and just do it. Like, just do it, put it out there, and I know it's this mental thing, but the more you do it, it becomes easier, right? It's just like anything else, it's just, there's this comfort level where, you ever like kind of count to three and jump into the cold water, type thing. And then when you actually land, it's not as bad as you thought it was. It's the same thing. I'm like, just put it up there. What's the worst that can happen? You can always take it down, right? You can always delete it. You can always edit, right? Certain things. So it's not the end of the world. Feeling like you have to spend 3.5 hours on something when honestly, just 5 seconds of something is better than nothing.
And I'm sure things like knowing your audience and your market has a big role. Having some kind of strategy has a big role in getting over that overwhelm.
If you know your audience well and you know what they're expecting from you, right? If they know you're funny or you're like, yeah, do something goofy, right? It's okay. They understand you, right? So again, knowing that will make it a little bit easier for what you throw out there. And again, we're talking about small businesses, right? So we're not talking about these high-end luxury brands, that have to, like have to have that $1 million look, right?
Yeah. Well, and they have the budget to hire a marketing team to do that for them. So the overwhelm is not there. When we're talking about overwhelm, we're talking usually about smaller businesses where you're doing it all. So there's the overwhelm of having so many tasks, and now I have to focus on marketing, and where do I even start? Again, the paralysis is there of I don't even know what platform to focus on.
When you're faced with like too many options, right? What do people always say, like when you're doing sales or something like that, you just give them 3 options, say option A, B, and C, right? It's a lot easier for someone to make a decision, right? So, when we're sitting there, I'm like, man, do I work on my website? Do I, do social posts? But if I do social posts, do I go to Facebook? Do I go to Instagram? Well, what about YouTube? Should I be on YouTube? Right? Should I be? Yeah. And you're sitting there like, man, like you're not any one of them. Right. So, I think for most, most folks, I think, again, if you're going to start someplace, right, just pick one, right? If your website, for instance, needs some work on your website. Okay. If you're not able to post, then you're not able to post. Be okay with it, right? Again, you're a one-person show, right? You don't have that type of money to go spend and hire people and things like that, right? So it's okay, right? If you decide that you can only post on Facebook, then it's Facebook, right? Mm-hmm. The nice thing is if you connect it right, you should Facebook, if you post on Facebook or Instagram or vice versa, they will interconnect. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think that, and that's the thing. If you just look at it like that, where like, I don't have to do everything, right? I don't have to be perfect. It's okay. Right. You know what I mean? Then it makes it just a little bit easier. Like forgive yourself. I think that's the biggest thing, because yes, there is all these platforms. I do agree, but I think again, going back to doing a little research, right? If you think that as a potential, like making videos like this is the best platform, all right, then do it, right? You know what I mean? They don't have to be 15-minute long videos or 30-minute long videos, but maybe it's just some frequently asked questions that like, someone that might hire you is looking for, that it might help, that you could say, hey, check out my video, right? So if you're not a video person and you're a better talker, record audio, do a podcast and things like that, right? So, but again, don't try to do too much, because again, if you're doing that, you can do little snippets on Facebook, right? And kind of share that with people. So again, don't look at the big picture. Like I always say, like when you're trying to eat an elephant, if you look at eating the whole elephant, maybe it's a bad analogy, but right, right, but if you eat it a little bit at a time, eventually, you wake up 1.5 years from now, right? And yes, it's done.
How do I move forward? How do I get into this habit of taking action?
I just listened to Mel Robbins. She's on, I forget what news thing, her book, and she talks about the 5-second rule, right? And the whole concept is before you let your brain like overthink something, go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go and do it. Just do it. And what it does is it kind of interrupts your brain pattern. You know what I mean? So that way you don't convince yourself not to.
What other things can I do?
So it's just like anything else. There's short-term goals. There's midterm, or like, intermediate goals, and there's like long-term goals, right? And some of the things that I do is I'll sit there and go, hey, what is my low-hanging fruit? And what that means is like, what are the things that I can do right now that don't take a ton of time that will have a big impact? Like, so start there, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I would do. When you look at in your situation from your business, right? You say, okay, when it comes to marketing as an example, you might say, I'm like, what are the things that I'm not doing right now, right? That are easy to do, that will have an impact, right? Low hanging fruit. Okay. Don't take a lot of work. There's always going to be things that, like, all right, midterm, it might be, and you sit there and say, ooh, I got to do that. But you know what? I got to do these things first, right? And then there's these long-term goals where I'd love to, create podcasts or this or that, blah, blah, blah. You may never get to the long-term goals, right? Because, and that's okay, right? But more importantly, what you're doing is you are tackling the things that you can right now, and you're moving forward, right? Just like prioritizing your day, okay? Being productive, right? Sometimes people will just sit there, I'm like, I have all these things to do. And I'm like, I got to do this, right? Okay, cool. They don't write anything down, right? And magically, sometimes some of these things get done. But what most people do is they don't do those things, right?
Mhm.
And there's this magic as far as like saying, hey, let me write a list of 1 through 10. And I'm always going to start working on number 1. I'm not going to work on number 2 until number 1 is done. And magically, what ends up happening is the more you do that, okay, you find yourself getting so much more done because, again, you're focusing on one thing and one thing only.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Now, you may decide that number 1, I can't finish right now because sometimes there's circumstances, but you're working on number 2, right? You know what I mean? But again, it's that focus that you're working on one thing until you get that done, right? Trust me right now, if you start doing that, you will be much more productive. Right. You know what I mean? And more importantly, what it is, you'll feel good about yourself. Because I think that's the other thing is when you get in that mode, you feel like you're not doing anything and you're just staying stagnant and you don't feel good. Right. It's magical when you're able to cross something off your list.
It's going to feel good. Like, hey, I did that. And guess what? It wasn't so bad. No one commented terrible things. No one, like, I got a couple of views and some likes, and like the next one will get more and more. And
Right.
you'll just keep growing from there.
It's just like anything else, right? If I decide I'm going to go to the gym, starting tomorrow, right? I'm not going to become this amazing physical specimen, right? On one day, right? Right. Or if you start a diet or whatever the situation may be, right? But I have a great shape, which is round, but anyway, that's another story. I work really hard at that, by the way. But, in all seriousness, looking at the big picture, like, in order for me to look like that, right, I have to do all these things, right? And you never do it because you get overwhelmed. You got to just take one step at a time. And we're going to have setbacks and we're going to have bad days that not everything, right, Nicole? Not everything goes our way, right? And I say this for a reason, but that's okay, right? Because you wake up the next day and guess what happens? It's better.
Move forward.
Right? As long as we know that, and we're, again, my brother-in-law always says it this way: forward is forward, right? It doesn't have to be huge steps. It could be little baby steps. But as long as you're moving forward, you're progressing.
Yeah, break it down so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming. We would like to encourage everyone who's watching to drop a comment and share your experience with overwhelm or the hangups and some motivational tips on what helped you overcome that too. So we know that it has happened and we'd like to hear from you.
Is there any action items that you want to let people know, Nicole?
Take a deep breath. Make a list.
Make a list.
And check off the first one.
Check off the first one, right? Low hanging fruit. Pick things that
Watch
are easy,
this
right?
video. Done. Subscribe.
Yes.
Done.
those are our checklists for you. So if you guys, yes, please do that. Like Nicole said, hit the subscribe button, comment, right? You know what I mean? Share an experience. If you're struggling with something, let us know. You know what I mean? We're here for you.